Donald Trump, yes, Trump confirms plans to take over Canada. He's going to annex Canada. I try to report these stories with a straight face. He plans and has confirmed it to annex Canada and push Palestinians, somehow get them from Gaza and to Canada. Trump tells a massive Super Bowl TV audience this. Here it is.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
Now, if he says this about Canada, I wonder what he says about Puerto Rico. All right. In the same interview, Trump tells Bret Baier Palestinians are not welcome back to Gaza in his beautiful real estate development plan. Here it is.
Build beautiful communities for the 1.9 million people. We'll build beautiful communities, safe communities. Could be 5, 6, could be 2, but we'll build safe communities a little bit away from where they are, where all of this danger is. In the meantime, I would own this. Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
Spent. No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them. Because if they have to return now, it'll be years before you could ever. It's not habitable. It will be years before it could happen. I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt. You know, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year.
Okay, at some point, I hope people start talking about Donald Trump's obvious mental decline and cognitive inability, as they did with Biden. This is insane. Imagine Biden or anybody else you take seriously in politics saying something like this. You would claim they have lost their mind, off their rocker. But when Trump says it, all of a sudden, MAGA says, oh, actually, that is genius. Let's be 100. Canada is a sovereign nation. Canada got something for your ass too. It's called a military. And that military is independent, the Canadian Royal Air Force, et cetera. And they are trained. They are trained to defend their domestic territory. So I'm sure they'll have something to say about this, number one. Number two, the fact that you have a proposal from a sitting US president to colonize, actively colonize 2 regions, not 1, 2. No agreement from anybody, no coalition from anyone, shows you the level of extreme disconnect this individual has toward humanity itself. The Palestinians, average age 19.1. It is a young community. They don't have the diplomatic and alliedship or allies throughout the world as, let's say, Israel does. They don't have the PR wing as Netanyahu. But I thought we all agreed that Israel was not at war with Palestinians. Remember when I said this early on? Netanyahu is utilizing this war on Hamas as a proxy to wage a war on the Palestinians in order to displace them. I said that on day one. Day one. Now he has an ally where he always has had one. It's called America. But once again, they were never at war with the Palestinians. So why are the Palestinians suffering? Because that was the proxy of this whole thing from the beginning anyway. Now, Republicans have gone on record, ironically, 2 or 3 of them, to talk about how utterly insane this is from Donald Trump. They sanitize the language that would say things like, well, he has a big imagination. One actually said, us taking over sovereign countries? No, not happening. Big ups to that lone Republican who said so. But at some point, these checks got to balance. At some point, these checks got to balance. I'm talking to the Republican lawmakers. You are a balance and check to the power of the executive authority. Use it. He's proposing these things because he believes you're all feckless cowards. I believe you're feckless cowards, but I'm not a Republican. He says he is. He's one of yours. Wosny, thoughts?
There's just so much to parse whenever Trump kind of opens his mouth, especially as it pertains to foreign relations, because you could tell he doesn't really care about this stuff and hasn't really thought it through. I think the candidate thing is just bluster. I think it's more of his flood the zone strategy in terms of giving us as many news items as possible so as not to focus and fixate on the more important ones. But I think the Palestinian stuff, the Gaza stuff it feels like a little bit more credible. It sounds like he's trying to, Trump fancies himself as a deal maker. So it sounds like he's trying to put out the most egregious ideas in terms of messaging to Hamas to maybe get them to make some more concessions after a deal has already been signed. Because again, in practice, we have to remind folks why this can't happen in the way that Donald Trump thinks that it can. One, Jordan and Egypt. It's not just that they don't want the Palestinians. They don't want to absorb 1 million people, new people into their population, 1 million new refugees into their populations, because it'll destabilize the country. Their regimes will be toppled. The people in charge of the countries that we're talking about would be signing up for assured destruction in terms of their power in their given countries. So that's the one it's not even that they don't want to, they can't accept these terms from Donald Trump or anybody else. And then you add the fact that the Palestinians are not just going to walk, get up, and leave. This being on that land is basically core foundational to their identities as Palestinians. They're not just going to leave and allow Israel to take over their ancestral homeland. And so they're going to fight these people. And the bottom line is Israel has waged this all-out total war on Hamas. Even Blinken came out and said they've actually got more members than when this thing first started. They haven't been able to displace them. So they're going to fight you tooth and nail throughout this whole thing. And we're going to send Americans to die over there for this? It makes absolutely no sense. And then forget about blowing up your dreams of normalizations with Saudi Arabia and all of these other Arab countries. Like, it's just a complete fantasy. And if he wanted to get serious and be like, all right, we're America, we're gonna push the Palestinians out ourselves, it would be a brutal, bloody, horrifically unpopular war.
Yeah, a disaster is what it would be.